Hello and welcome to our second Formula One show here at Cranfield University in association with Racecar Engineering magazine. My name is Gemma Hatton, I'm Deputy Editor of Racecar Engineering.
My name is Mark Jenkins, I'm Professor of Business Strategy at Cranfield School of Management.
Hello, I'm Clive Temple, I'm the Programme Director for Motorsport and Automotive here at Cranfield University.
We've had 5 races so far for this season, and in this show we're going to touch on the season so far, who's doing well, who's not, touch on the street circuits and the comparison with Formula E, and then also overtaking the 2019 aero rules and what we can expect for the rest of the season. So Mark, have you got any thoughts on your opinion and how right or wrong our predictions were of our first show?
Yeah, I think it's been great actually. I think we, if we'd had the last Grand Prix, the Spanish Grand Prix, our prediction would have been perfect, but It didn't start off that way with Ferrari and then Red Bull taking the races. So I think it's been great. It's been really mixed up. It's been mixed up because of tyres and safety cars and things, but it's been great.
Yeah, I concur with that because one of the issues that Formula One has got is that it can be far too predictable these days, because one of the things that the teams are chasing is reliability, and with reliability comes the fact that you don't get so many blow-ups as such, gearbox failures, all those sorts of things, and yeah, we've had a topsy-turvy start to the year.
Yeah, I mean, we've had Mercedes who have performed maybe potentially not as expected for the first few races. You've got Red Bull, who the car seems to be there, the raw talent seems to be there, they just need to control their drivers a bit better. And Ferrari, I'm not sure, they're there or thereabouts.
I think, in fairness to Ferrari, I think they were far more ahead of the game than we thought they were.
Yep.
So all credit to them. But whether they'll be able to stick at that pace remains to be seen.
Yeah, that is interesting because certainly when we had our initial broadcast, we weren't really thinking Ferrari were going to be on the money, and they started off looking really, really hot.
Yeah. And then, of course, you've got the likes of Williams who are not performing as they would like.
Yeah, I think that's that's clear. And there was a communication from Claire Williams saying that they were looking forward to changes where Formula One was concerned because they felt that that would bring them back into being a competitive team. But with the current landscape, they've got a long way to go to catch up. And being a Brit, it is disappointing to see Williams where they are at this moment in time.
Williams and McLaren, they're both two great teams, great part of the history of Formula One. But both of them struggling a bit. I think it's also interesting that 3 of the major technical roles, people have left those roles at Williams, at McLaren and at Sauber. Now, whether those people will surface, whether it's a musical chairs game or whether it's new blood coming on remains to be seen. But clearly things aren't happy and they're having to shake things up to try and improve their performance.
Yeah, I think where McLaren's concerned as well, we had a lot of communication last year regarding Honda.
Yep.
And, McLaren were blaming Honda. And yet, they have struggled to a certain extent where the Renault engine's concerned. Is that because McLaren are trying to package very, very tightly and therefore having thermal management issues, etc., etc. How good is their car with the new power plant vis-a-vis other runners in the field? Well, look at Red Bull.
But could that be because they had to compromise their car design, their aerodynamics to deal with that Honda powertrain?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then think of Toro Rosso. Again, they have performed fantastically in some respects and other ones. So it just
again, we're back to the topsy-turvy nature of this season.
Yeah.
They got off to a great start in testing. They were looking amazing. Got a lot of miles under their belt.
Yeah.
Haven't totally fulfilled the potential, but there's a lot of potential there.
And it's early days for a race team with that new engine,
yes.
really.
Yeah, that's true.
And so obviously the biggest change in Formula One has been Liberty Media, their style of broadcasting Formula One as a sport. And I didn't know if you had any opinions on that, Mark?
I think it's early days. I think they had some problems with the new live streaming operation that they're putting in place. I think they've got their ideas are right. I particularly enjoyed the interpretation of the halo now using the graphics. Yes. So it's classic Formula One. You make the best out of what you've got, and you find an innovative way to get more information to the audience. So the way they're using the halo, I think, is also very effective.
I think the most important thing about that is that they're actually listening to the fans, because after race one, everyone was saying, you know, the feedback on the halo wasn't fantastic. So they've changed that, and now actually you want to look at the halo because that's where the speed is, the gear changes, etc. So I think that's very clever, but it's also saying, hello, we're listening to you now, which I think is quite an important message.
That's refreshing, because in the past, I think the fans have felt that they haven't been listened to. And, you know, we were in that world where it was very exclusive and perhaps not inclusive. And having some appreciation of American motorsport, which is, you know, Liberty Media is an American-based company, they do go about things in a different way. And we know that Formula One has got to really embrace the audience that is actually not its current audience as such, but a younger demographic. And I think it's interesting that, you know, what we've seen so far, we had all the controversy over the grid girls. We've now got more opportunities, I think, where engaging with a younger audience is concerned. But I still want to see more of the engagement through, say, social media, for example, rather than just the traditional broadcast medium. And I don't know what your views are on that.
I think the thing that's impressed me is the esports innovation.
Yep.
You know, that we've got an esports series, and I think that will become more critical, and I think that there will be characters and individuals that will come up through that. So in reaching that demographic, I think that's a great idea. And there are a number of things bubbling under. Some will work, some won't, but that's what innovation's all about, trying things out. Yeah,
and I think that there is the sort of, if you like, risk-taking. They're prepared to take some risks, whereas what we had before was starting to get quite staid.
My only concern is that I feel like in some respects they are dumbing down the sport. You have some of the presenters who are trying to do the technical content, and it's at least featuring, especially with influence such as Pat Simmons. But it's things like during the race and qualifying, you know, having the logos next to the driver names as opposed to the tyre compounds. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but sitting there as an engineer, or you know, you want to know what tyre, because you'll miss something like Red Bull qualifying on the super softs while everyone else is on the ultra soft. And it's things like that for me, those tiny little details that they are, you know, moving away from. And for me as an engineer, I just sit there and I find it a bit, just a tad bit frustrating. But I think you disagree. You think,
yeah. To me, it's not dumbing down, and I think it's trying to put things in context. And the engineering in Formula One has always been leading edge, always will continue to be. My worry has been the obsession with aerodynamics, is that we've got further and further into minute changes like the new McLaren wing, which is a work of art. But at the end of the day, all it's doing is stopping Alonso from overtaking the car in front. So I think the technical side needs some help to sort of rebalance and bring in other technologies, which I don't see as dumbing down, but I see as sort of shifting the priorities.
Okay.
I think also what we've had in the past has been a failure, and I think we mentioned this the last time, a failure on the part of the organisers of the sport, the media broadcasters, even the teams themselves, to actually convey what technological advances they have brought to play. And what's interesting is, you know, a lot of people talk about the fact that, you know, F1 doesn't really relate to road cars, etc. But actually, you know, when you consider the advances on thermal management, where hybrid engines are concerned, which is what we've had in Formula One for a number of years now, it's fantastic. And I still feel that story's been undersold. And yes, it depends how passionate you are, I suspect, about the engineering side, and then do you feel comfortable or uncomfortable about this issue of dumbing down? But there's still a fantastic story there where technology is concerned. And as Mark says, it is the pinnacle of technology development. And I hope that remains the case.
I think the other dimension is cost. And that is, it's not sustainable to carry on at the levels of cost that are needed, particularly if they want new independent teams to come into Formula One. Yeah. So I think that's part of the equation as well.
But sort of touching on the point of dumbing down, quite often you hear people saying, I don't want to talk about tyres, or let's not mention tyres, and actually I think a point that again was sort of undersold was the fact that it was the tyre warm-up at Baku which made it such an interesting race. From, you had the unfortunate puncture for Bottas, but a street circuit layout, particularly that one, doesn't have those high-speed corners that are putting in that lateral energy and therefore that temperature and that grip into the tyres. So drivers were taking much longer to warm up their tyres, which meant the undercut suddenly became less effective, which I think was one of the reasons why Mr. Ricciardo ended up in that unfortunate situation with his teammate. But you had Vettel locking up after the safety car. With street circuits you get the safety cars, you get that problem with having those cooler tyres. And I think, again, that was another thing that no one sort of picked up. The reason Baku was amazing was because of the fact no one could warm up the tyres. Grosjean even bashed it into the wall, trying to warm up his tyres. But I think street circuits, they're pretty keen for street circuits at the moment, and that's not... You're a bit concerned about that.
Well, I am, because I'm a traditionalist, and I'm a great believer in the Grand Prix circuits of
Monaco,
like Spa, like good old Silverstone. But we do have to be mindful of the business behind F1, and yes, they want to go to other street circuits. There's talk about this race in Miami, for example. Beyond my concern regarding I don't want to lose the classic Grand Prix tracks, I then get worried about the differentiation or lack of differentiation between the Formula E platform, which is city-based, and then Formula One having more and more street circuit races. And whilst Miami could be a good idea, we've touched on the issue of overtaking and talked about aero, etc. Where you've got a street circuit, by its very nature, it's difficult, as we know at Monaco, for example, for them to overtake. And I still think that motor racing should be about overtaking.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things, we've got these new regulations that they are sort of fast tracking from the 2021 big rule changes that we're going to see into next year. And, they're all in an effort to try and reduce aerodynamics to promote overtaking. So how can they're contradicting themselves with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great they're introducing them early, because the danger is, with 2021 being the main sort of regulation shift, that everything gets put back to then, and then if it doesn't work, it's all a disaster. So again, it's going around this cycle of trying things out, seeing how it works, learning, trying something else out. But as I said, to me, the front wings and the barge boards and everything has got to a ridiculous extent. So I like the idea of simplifying the front wings. And they'll always respond to those challenges.
Yeah.
They'll always find new ideas. So I don't see it as a problem, because these are creative people that want to win, and they'll find a way of taking advantage of that.
And just to clarify the rule changes that are proposed, so there's 3 main points, and these were voted for by the required amount of percentage to make them pass by the FIA, the commercial rights holder, and the teams themselves. Although teams like Red Bull...
They were split, weren't they? 50-50.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, it's a simplified front wing, simplified brake ducts, front brake ducts with no winglets, and I'm sure you see teams spend millions and millions of pounds on these intricate winglets, because that's such a crucial way of dissipating the heat from the brakes and helping tyre temperature, because tyres and brakes are some of the most important performance factors.
Yes.
Yes.
Especially tyres.
And then finally, a wider and deeper rear wing, all adding to this simplified concept. And actually, from the social media engagement we've had with our readers, whenever I put a picture up of that amazing McLaren wing, actually the response is not positive at all. There's very few people going, wow, this is amazing engineering, because they've been told this is stopping overtaking and therefore exciting racing. They're going, this is stopping, and which is true, but I think that the engineering value is being lost. People are not appreciating that anymore. So I think that the 2019 regulations for the aero changes, I think it's going to be a nightmare for the teams, because you change the front wing, you've got to change everything else.
Yes.
But I think maybe it's what the fan base are. And like you say, it doesn't matter how simplified you make the regulations, engineers will rise to the challenge, and there'll always be interesting content. It's just the case of having the platforms to explain that content.
Do you think then that the golden age of the aerodynamicist is going to fall away, and the rise of the, say, powertrain or even tyre engineer?
Yeah, well, we never really get a look in. Tyre engineers always.
But we always have those cycles, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Where aerodynamics comes and goes, where turbos and KERS. So we have cycles of different technologies, and it's how the teams adapt to those different technologies and take them forward that I think is the fascinating thing about Formula One.
But we've also got the huge regulation change that may or may not happen with regards to the cost cap for 2021. Now, goodbye aerodynamic departments of 50, 100 plus.
Yes, and what's interesting there, of course, is that a number of years ago they effectively put an end to test teams, and so we saw the rise of simulators.
Yep.
And I wonder these days if the FIA, for example, realise just what an advantage the simulator and simulation time means to a team, because the sophistication within the top teams where their simulator's concerned is incredible, and they're using that as an engineering tool.
Yes.
And they're spending a lot of money on it, but they're not actually being restricted in that area as yet.
I think it's Pat Simmons invented the Simmons sausage.
Yes,
he was saying they squeeze one area and then, of course, you spend in another area. So, if they're really serious about bringing costs down, then it's got to find a way of looking at the whole thing.
Yeah, you've got to have that sort of holistic view.
Yeah. So actually, even if they do bring in the cost cap, there will be. It's not such a drama, because that money will be spent elsewhere, however else they can. Whatever's not regulated, that money will be spent, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think the challenge is, though, is, as you say, that a cost cutting in Formula One means lost jobs.
Yes.
And any organisation wants to
Coming
lose
from Manor,
jobs.
I can
Exactly.
say.
So this is not a neutral, objective thing. This is people's livelihood. So it's not an insignificant thing.
Very much so.
To find a route through is going to be very challenging.
Very much so. And actually, that's an interesting consideration, because you have to think then, if there is a reduction in the number of personnel within Formula One, what implications does that have across the whole motorsport landscape?
The market's going to be flooded.
And in fact, the automotive world as well. There's going to be some highly capable engineers out there. Now, my understanding, of course, is that Formula E is ramping up where its technologies are concerned, etc. And that's why a lot of OEMs are interested in it, not just because it's a more cost-effective way of racing, but of course, with the rise of electrification of vehicles, it's a great platform. And they could be attracting more people, not just from the existing teams, but dare I say it, students from an institution like Cranfield who've done an MSc in motorsport engineering, or in fact what we're going to be offering, an MSc in motorsport mechatronics, because mechatronics is becoming more and more of a consideration right the way through the automotive and motorsport world.
And I think that will be the next wave from aerodynamics, move into AI, robotics, and all all those issues.
Yeah, AI, machine learning.
Yeah, which links back to the automotive era and that push that they have for, like they've got in Formula E, and that manufacturer support, which we so crave as Formula One sort of moved more away from the automotive support.
And of course we've lost it where WEC's concerned to a certain extent as well.
We have indeed. However, I think that's enough for a whole new show.
Well, there you go.
So you may be seeing more of us. But on that bombshell, as Mr. Jeremy Clarkson would say, thank you very much for joining us for this second Formula One show. I think we've got an exciting season. The first 5 races have already been very turbulent, and I think it's not going to change for the rest of the season. So thanks for joining us, and please comment and share, like below, and we'll answer you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.